Greetings and welcome again to the C3 podcast. This is Minister Robert Webb, and I am here with Dr. Earl Grant Jr., pastor of the Covenant Community Church, and we're continuing our episodes in the series of Unshakable Faith. Last episode, we talked about an unshakable walk, and we talked about Enoch. This episode, we're going to talk about unshakable work. And I ain't going to lie to you, Pastor. I was reading down in Hebrews. I was trying to figure out where you was going, and I saw my boy Noah, and I said, I know he gonna come with something good for this sermon, for this particular scripture, because Noah is an interesting person, very interesting in the fact that he was working on something. He was working on something for a very long time. God told him it was gonna rain, and they ain't never seen rain before, and you want me to build an ark? I ain't never seen one of these before, but I knew that this was going to be an incredible sermon, unshakable work, and we're in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 7, and it's the New Living Translation, and it says, "By faith Noah, when warned about things not yet seen, in holy fear built an ark to save his family. By his faith, he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness that is in keeping with faith." Pastor, let's talk about this young man by the name of Noah. When you were sitting down and thinking about how to approach giving us this message and giving us this word from God, what were some things that were going through your mind about Noah in conjunction with this Unshakable Faith series that you've been preaching?
Well, I think you stated already, to trust God, to believe God, when what God is telling you to do goes against everything you're familiar with. And so it comes back to, do you have confidence in God, that God really is, such that you can have a conviction to act upon where your confidence is?
I'm going to tell you right now, Pastor, I probably would have had a problem.
I think we all would, but that's why we got the illustration. That's why we got the illustration that you have to start, though, as Noah did, with a verbal certainty. And that is, you got to know that it's God that's speaking. And so you got to know that the word that you're receiving is the word from God.
You finna get us in trouble again, Pastor, because I would argue that there are some people who are working on some stuff that they didn't hear from God on to start working on.
That's the problem. Because generally we want God to bless what we're doing. Instead of doing what God wants us to do, and then the blessing come with it.
Yeah, they're going to cancel us after this one. This is probably going to be our last episode, Pastor, because I want to work on what I want to work on, and I want God to just come meet me where I'm at. It's kind of like what you said in the last episode about Enoch. Enoch walked with God. It didn't say God walked with Enoch. Enoch went to where God was. We want to start working on things, and we want God to meet us and bless us in the midst of what we're doing, but we haven't gotten a verbal confirmation that it was God that told us to do what it is that we are doing. Yes. But go ahead.
It's like the bumper sticker folk put on the back of their car and said, "God is my co-pilot." Wrong answer. God ain't nothing. He's not your co-pilot. God is either the pilot or not.
But here we see a young man exemplifying what it truly means to trust and have faith in the person of Noah. God tells Noah that it's going to rain, that he has condemned the world, and he's going to wipe it clean, and he needs Noah to build an ark.
Yes. So Noah expressed, like I said, first of all, verbal certainty. And then he connected with verbal certainty a visual certainty because he heeded what he heard. He acted upon what he heard from God. In other words, he went out, took his axe or whatever he used to go chop down the tree. The first tree that Noah chopped down was an example of visual certainty. That this is what God told me, and this is what I'm going to do. Which will then lead to, over time, like 120 years, that a future certainty will come to pass.
But you got to start with the verbal certainty and then a visual certainty to know that the future certainty will come to pass.
The verbal and the visual have a dynamic relationship. They work together to bring about the future.
Now, I hear you loud and clear, Pastor. Talk to me about how we combat the voices from those around us who see us working on things that don't make sense in their human fleshly eyes and mind, but yet we are obeying what God is telling us to do. How do we, I don't even want to say combat that, because I don't think that's something that we have to combat. How do we look beyond that? How are we not swayed by that?
Well, I think you got to distinguish between just getting information and bringing about transformation. Because nowadays, people hear a lot of things. And so, as we stated in the sermon series, I think that the challenge is this. We have a culture that is addicted to information, but they are allergic to implementation. And so it's like people that have allergies. When it comes time for implementation, they swell up. And you need a spiritual EpiPen.
Oh my!
To give them an injection.
Come on, Pastor.
Because they get all of this information, and they want information. That's why they are on all of the social media outlets. They're getting all this stuff. They're listening to all these people saying, "I need a word," and "I got a word," and all this word, and you got all this word, but where's the work? Because what good is the word if you don't have any work that demonstrates what word you receive?
A lot of people talking about we need a new word and new revelation, but they ain't done nothing with the verbal confirmation that they've already gotten. And here in the text, Noah is showing us what it truly means to have an unshakable work, to hear God and then to heed God by doing.
Right. Because trust, which is faith, leads to obedience.
You said something. I don't know if it was in this sermon or not. You were talking about trust. Well, I got to make sure I get it right. You were talking about trust and obedience are not synonymous. Or was that what you were talking about? Don't worry about it. I got it in my notes. You were saying something about trust and obedience not being synonymous with one another.
Correct. They don't mean the same thing.
They don't mean the same thing.
But they are connected. Because if you trust God, then the evidence of your trust will show up through your obedience.
Oh, I got a whole bunch of notes in here, Pastor. You've been preaching. You said obedience is not a product; it's a process. That wasn't it. You did say this in the sermon, talking about Noah's obedience. You said there is no regret in obeying God. I may have resisted, but I've never had any regrets in obeying God. And clearly we see that with Noah, because in the end, the rain did come. In the end, God did do what he said he was going to do. And if Noah had not obeyed God in his unshakable work, then he would have met the same fate as everybody else that was trying to knock on the door and get in.
Because there are some barriers to our obedience.
Talk to us about these barriers, Doc.
There are three primary barriers.
Okay.
The first one is there's the emotional barrier, which says, is it safe to trust God? You know, what God is telling me to do, is this safe to do? Because of what my obedience is going to potentially bring against me. If I do this, what will this cause? What will be the consequence? Is it safe? That's one barrier. That's emotional. The second barrier is the intellectual barrier. Is does it make sense to trust God? I mean, it didn't logically. It didn't make sense to build no ark. It didn't make sense to say it's gonna rain. It never rain. We're in the Fertile Crescent area. We're in Mesopotamia. We're in the desert basically,
Right.
and not near any great bodies of water. So why do we need a boat? And does it make sense? It don't make sense. And then for 120 years, come on. You got to keep. So that don't make sense. So you got the emotional barrier, you got the intellectual barrier, and then you have the volitional barrier. Am I able to trust God? I mean, am I able to do it? Am I able to keep this up? Because it don't look like it's coming to any great end.
Because according to the measurements of the ark, I'm trying to figure out how he did it all.
Yeah. So he had to get some help, probably. you got your boys out there and their family and everybody else, because it's 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, and 45 feet, like some 3 stories high, all this stuff. And so you're building this great big thing, this ark. Does it make sense? Am I able to do this? So you got to overcome these barriers, but that's where you have to have faith in God. You put your trust in the Lord, in who he is.
And not your own capabilities or abilities.
Correct. And the other thing about with Noah's situation that I don't know if I covered it in this sermon series, but anyway, there were 2 concurrent realities operating in this situation with Noah. On the one hand, he was building an ark that was going to provide salvation for his family. But the other reality that was right with the salvation is God's judgment. Judgment and salvation are concurrent realities.
Oh, that's good, Pastor.
Because you are living in one or the other.
Oh, that's good, Pastor.
You're either existing in salvation or you're existing under God's judgment.
Ooh. That's heavy. That's heavy right there.
So, but when you're in salvation, you got access to the ark of safety.
And when you're living in judgment, you on the outside.
Trying to get
in.
Trying to get in.
But you can't come in. I hear you knocking.
That's the reality.
Oh man.
So Noah, an unshakable work, led to salvation of his family, of his sons and their wives, and Noah's wife. And in chapter 7 of Genesis, it said the Lord shut him in. I just like that verse. It's Genesis 7, I think 16, where it says they went in, but the Lord shut him in. So they went in, but the Lord shut him in, which means the disconnect in the pronoun there between the plural and the singular is they went in plural, but their safety was based on the singular him, because the Lord shut him in, which secured them. In other words, you could say, I'm with him.
Yes, I'm with.
Yeah, because I'm with him.
Yeah.
And the him is really not Noah, but the him is really pointing to Jesus Christ. Because I'm with him.
Yeah.
I'm secure.
I'm secure.
So.
Unshakable work. Real quick, Pastor. Give us, for those of us who have been walking with God a long time, we say, we've been in the church, and some of us who have gotten a little weary in well-doing. What are some words of encouragement for those of us who had been working, faithful in working, and then just along the way, kind of got burnt out, kind of maybe lost a little bit of the faith? What would you say to someone like that in this unshakable work, who have desire, who have that passion that is still there, but maybe something is keeping them? Maybe it's, again, not to use an excuse, maybe it's people in the church. Maybe it's personal circumstances. Maybe it's own self-doubt. What would you say to someone like that?
Well, I would refer them to Noah and the ark as an example.
Okay.
Because it's interesting that on the ark, they had all of these animals. And they were on the ark for over a year. Now, just biologically speaking, there was mess on the ark. But I don't have any record of anybody saying I want to get off.
Talk, Pastor.
So when people say, well, the church is messy, they got messy. Okay, but when you know where your salvation is.
Come on.
The salvation was in the ark.
Yes, sir.
The salvation for the believer today is in the church, which is the old ship of Zion.
Oh, come on, doctor.
It has landed.
It has landed many a thousand.
A thousand. There ain't no danger in the water, because King Jesus is my captain. So you got to stay on the boat.
Got to stay on the boat.
As messy as it is sometimes.
Oh, that'll preach right there.
In spite of the mess, know that God got you in the mess. He can keep you through the mess. And the mess is keeping you from judgment.
Ooh, we got to go. We got
by faith. I'm sorry.
All by faith. All by faith.
Yeah.
Listen. We thank y'all for joining us for this fourth episode of the C3 Podcast. Again, I'm Minister Robert Webb, and I'm here with none other than Dr. Earl Grant Jr., pastor of the Covenant Community Church. We would love to see you on Sundays at 10 a.m. We would love for you to come visit with us on Wednesday for Wednesday night worship in the Word that starts at 7, and worship starts at 10 a.m. on Sundays. Pastor, I'm enjoying this time where we get to share and talk about right now this Unshakable Faith series that you've been operating in and you've been walking us through. So I just want to tell you thank you for this wisdom and this knowledge that you've been giving us. I hope that you all are enjoying this, and we will see you next time.
Well, hello, and thank you for joining the C3 Podcast of Covenant Community Church. We are delighted and excited that you chose to be with us today. And if you have any questions or comments that you would like to share with us, we invite you to go to our website at mycovenantcc.com, fill out our virtual connection card, share your comment or your question, and I promise you we'll get back to you as soon as possible.